welcome to the Kingston Canadian Film Festival. We wish we could be there live, but we're glad to have this opportunity to speak to you through the wonders of technology. I'm glad you picked up this film and decided to watch it. I saw it a few times and I found it very moving. And I really welcome this opportunity to talk to its director, Nadine. I'm going to Pequeneza. Did I say that correct?
Pequeneza.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
you
a
got
much
it.
more Pequeneza. I wasn't even close, but thank you for saying that. I got Nadine right. Nadine, thank you for joining us. And thank you for taking the time and effort to make this beautiful, beautiful film.
Oh, thank you very much, Tom. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to talk about it because it does raise a lot of questions. And the screenings that we have had at in-person events, people are always wondering, what can I do to help these whales in the situation?
So let's start there. What can they do to help these whales and the situation?
Well, the first is becoming aware of them. They're a critically endangered species. There's less than 336 now is the last count. When I started the film, there were 411. So it is an urgent issue. And understanding what the major threats are, which is fishing gear entanglement and ship strikes. And so in our daily lives, through the food that we consume and also through the things that we buy, because so many goods are shipped now, we play a part in this. And even recreational boaters, if you've watched the film or if you haven't yet, you'll learn that, small boats can be responsible for the deaths of these great whales when they're calves.
Yeah, that's absolutely heartbreaking. And of course, you're referencing snow cone, excuse me, snow cone's calf in that remark.
Mm.
When you hear about this, when you hear about people, and you address this in the film, but when you hear about people fishing and maybe curbing what we eat, etc., and being aware of that, we also then think of people's livelihoods and culturally, as well as so ethically, culturally, all these things come into play. How do we address or how do we come to terms with people's livelihoods and with the livelihoods of the whales? Sorry, not their livelihoods, but their lives.
Mhm. Well, you're right. The film is really about cohabitation and how do we do that? And that's why I thought it was very important to have a fisherman in the film. There's a crab fisherman, Martin Noel, who's from Shippagan, New Brunswick. He's third generation fishing family. And he's really been working very hard with engineers and different organizations, scientists, to try to find ways to fish that pose less risk for the whales. Because up until 2015, the North Atlantic right whale wasn't really coming into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is where Martin fishes. So it was a completely new problem. They weren't even aware of these whales, much less that their fishing methods could be dangerous for them. And so when they first appeared and they had this large number of deaths in 2017, which is really what compelled me to make the film. 17 right whales died in that 1 year and 12 of them in Canadian waters. And so Martin reacted to that. He started testing new gear that engineers were making where a vertical line is not required, because it's that vertical line that sits between the buoy at the surface of the water and the traps at the bottom of the ocean that is problematic for right whales and other whales. But specifically baleen feeding whales and whales that spend so much of their time by the coast. Their habitat is coastal. And so that's why they're at such great risk for this. And so what Martin is doing, and not just that, he also formed the first whale rescue team in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And every year he goes out with the scientists, helping them conduct their research activities in the Gulf. So he's really someone who's wholeheartedly trying to solve this problem. And he's not alone. He might have been one of the first, but now there are many, many more fishermen who are joining him in helping to develop alternative ways of fishing. And they might not be used, to completely do away with the traditional methods of fishing, but at least when the whales are present and there's a high risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say Martin was one of my favorite characters. I use the term character even in a documentary because people are characters within themselves. So unless you have a better term for me to use, but he was one of my favorites in because he broke down the stereotype I had of what a career fisherman would think about this. Um, and he said it's a no-brainer. I'm not going to quote him correctly, but he said it's a no-brainer that if we want to continue on and as we are, and I gathered from what he was saying against the protest, against sort of any antagonistic attitude towards fishermen, that he had to do this. It seemed so sensible. I mean, meeting him, um, you meeting him, tell me he was as delightful in person as he is on screen, because he really truly was one of my favorite people in the film.
Yeah, no, he's a lovely personality and person. It was really enjoyable to spend time with him. And, it took some talking before he agreed to be in the film because of that representation that most media has given to the fishing industry and the fishermen that do this work. And so, yeah, I'm really glad he decided to come on. And not only is he practical, because what you described is a very practical reaction to the situation, but he's also very um, feeling, you
Yeah.
know. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do remember the scene because it's one of the most dramatic scenes in the film when we came upon that 5-year-old entangled whale. And Martin was captaining the research vessel at the time, working with the scientists. And he was really affected by that, as was everyone else on the ship. We've never actually seen a fresh entanglement like that. Most times when people come across entanglements, the whale has been entangled for days, weeks, sometimes months. And so there's usually no gear left attached to the rope. It's really just rope that is entangling or trailing behind the whale. And in this case, it was a fresh entanglement within hours because the scientists had actually sighted that whale in the water, gear-free, feeding in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And then 4 hours later, maybe 4.5 hours later, we came upon the whale entangled. And so it was really a very violent reaction that the whale had to trying to free himself from gear that was trying to pin him to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are the kind of things when we watch them, you can't help but feel an emotional connection. I think we've known for decades, centuries maybe, that whales are very, very intelligent, like dolphins, and there's a huge connection between us and them. Um, how this perhaps is a question you can't answer, but I have to throw it out there. How aware do you think these whales are at any attempt of rescuing them once they're entangled, or is it are we still sort of fearful to them? Do they still fear us in a way?
Yeah, I can only tell you what some of the people who do this disentanglement work had told me, and that is that different whales react differently. Um, right whales tend to not like or submit at all to any sort of rescue attempt. So, I mean, I think Marie described, or Maria Harvey, who works with the Center for Coastal Studies in Cape Cod Bay area, or the northeastern United States, doing the disentanglement work. She said they'll just bolt. They really don't. They don't like the boats being around. They don't like. Also, you have to imagine when the mechanics of it is that they're throwing out a hook that has a knife on the inside so they can cut the rope and try and free the whale. But you can imagine they're pulling on something that is caught on the whales, either in the baleen or around their rostrum, or it could be on a peck or the tail, and it's sore. It doesn't feel good. And so I think they're aware that somebody's pursuing them,
Mm,
enough to get away in another direction. And I think you'll remember Bridget, who was doing the aerial observation during that rescue of, this was an attempt trying to free snow cone from an entanglement that she had had, which is that mom calf pair that we follow throughout the 2 years and is really the central storyline of the film. I wanted whales to be characters as much as humans in this film, just so that people
Mhm.
could start to understand that attachment and that they are individuals. And scientists are seeing that more and more with the research that they do. But what I was going to say, sorry, with Bridget is that she said snow cone, because what they do is they'll attach a line with a buoy on the end that floats at the surface. And the idea there is to try to keep the whale at the surface so that they can actually have a chance of cutting the rope. And so they had attached a buoy, and of course they're following that. And at one point it had become completely still. And so, it was as though snow cone had went under the water and stopped moving, that she was just resting or staying put, trying to lose the boat that was following her. So to me, that denotes a sense of awareness.
Yeah.
And certainly when we were on the boat with Nick, the photographer that we filmed with, and his quest to try and get underwater images of the whales, the two whales that approached us or approached our boat, and they came within a foot of the boat. And these are massive whales. They're 60-ton whales, 17 or 18 meters long. And they came within literally a couple of feet of the boat and then
Wow.
just dove under, just gently. They didn't rock the boat. It was incredible. And that's awareness.
Yeah, that certainly is. Whether that is a curiosity or a gentleness, or whether that, I guess there's no way of knowing, but it's fascinating. And it leads me to this next observation. And it's the trajectory that animal documentaries have gone from when I was a kid, and they were given personalities and characters that were unreasonable, I think. And now we have very realistic characters of the animals. I wonder if I'm clearly obvious a lot older than you are, but when you were younger too, watching these Disney documentaries and things about animals, the necessity, if in fact there is a necessity, to advance from these sort of anamorphic views of animals as characters to reality, and how that trajectory happened, or why that is essential.
I think scientists are still they really don't want to give human characteristics to the animals that they study. And they think that that line is very important in order to keep their science pure. What I found interesting when I was doing this film is that there are scientists who've been studying these whales for decades. If you look at Moira Brown, who's in the film, or at Stormy Mayo, or Barb Zudsma, these people have been doing this for the better part of their lives. And they haven't seen the kind of protections necessary to allow this species to recover. And so I wouldn't say they've crossed the line, but there's been a blurring of lines, where they're allowing themselves to become advocates for this species. And, really with the work that they've done and the closeness that they have to these animals. I said there were 336 is the estimated number left. Most of those whales are documented. So they all have numbers, and there's a right whale catalog that's been in existence since the 1930s. Most of those whales, they have genetic samples from. They've been photographed year over year in different habitats. And so they know a lot about these animals. They know entire familial lines. They know where they like to rear their calves, where they like to eat. They have those individual characteristics. They're coming to know it more and more, but the amount of research and documentation that they have accumulated about the North Atlantic right whale is really astounding.
And I think we get far more from the understanding of animals within their own personalities, and we don't need to put ours onto them. And I think that you've done that beautifully with this film. Before we wrap up, I understand there's a bit of epilogue to Snow Cone Story.
Yeah, there is. I was amazed when I heard of it. I was on a call because that footage that we got of the entangled whale, which is 4615, that whale hasn't been named yet. We're showing it to some groups in the United States who are involved in creating a regulatory framework for protections. And it was on that call that I heard about what happened to Snow Cone, and I could not believe it. She has had another calf.
Oh, good.
Yeah, just last year while entangled. So they have not been able to remove the rope from her baleen. So there's still rope trailing from her mouth. And it's the first time that a right whale has ever given birth entangled. And while it speaks to the resistance or the resilience of this animal and the hope for their survival, it's also, a reminder of the threats that they face. And there's footage, you can see it online. It was captured, well, you can see it on our socials because we've reposted it, but it was captured by Georgia Department of Natural Resources. They do a lot of the research work with FWC, the Florida Wildlife Commission, sorry, documenting the new calves. So they actually have some drone footage that they took of the calf and Snow Cone with that line trailing. And so it's it's really affecting footage.
Yeah, and I suppose that there we could take some hope in that story that this can happen, that they can have calves in entanglement. And oh, but I did say we're wrapping things up, but this is just way too interesting to close right now. I have to ask you to, if the you say in the liner notes, or we also hear in the film, that they don't die natural deaths normally. They are killed most often by recreation vehicles or other boats or entanglement. What would their lifespan be were they left alone, if there was nothing on the ocean or other than what was meant to be there?
Yeah, scientists think their lifespan is on average 70 years
Hmm.
currently. So yeah, unfortunately, the environment that we have created for them has not allowed um, new right whales or right whales that are coming into existence in the modern era to live out their lives because of interference of human activities.
Mm. Is this, in going into a touchy issue, is there a rationale for capturing them and breeding and allowing a safe breeding ground and opportunities to grow and then re-releasing?
That's never been done to my knowledge. I mean, just the size of this great whale, I think it would be almost impossible to do that. And the amount of distance that they travel within a day, I can't imagine a place where you could, keep them out of the wild that would be a healthy
Yeah,
experience for them. Yeah.
good.
But I
Sorry, go ahead.
so I was just going to say, Tom, you asked me right off the beginning, what can people do? Because I introduced the question, but I forgot to say the most obvious thing. So we have an impact campaign that we're doing with the film, and we're working with a number of NGOs, IFAW, the Canadian Wildlife Federation, the Canadian Whale Institute, Sierra Club, Oceans North, and all of us together have created a letter, an email campaign that both Canadians and Americans can participate in. So if you go to the website, we've got lastoftherightvhales.com. Take action is the page, and it's a very simple letter that you could send just with a click if you want to support your government in trying to put in place or continue with some of the protection measures that the Canadian government has already been administering since those deaths occurred in 2017. And we also have a survey there. So if you have seen the film, we've got, it's 5-minute survey, some quick questions about what you might be willing to do in your own life to save or to help protect these whales. And that information can be very helpful to those groups that I mentioned. So if you have the time and you're interested, if you go to the website, it's there as well, the survey.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. You not just created a wonderful film, you created a cause and an avenue for us to act on it. Thank you very much, Nadine, for chatting with us.
Thanks, Tom. I'm really glad that the film is at your festival. Thank you.